Last week, I told you that going dark in your marketing and in your visibility during the summer is what guarantees a slow fall for stylists. And I know many of you listening were thinking, okay, but how am I going to balance the responsibilities I have, my kids being home, the trips I've planned and already paid for with what you were telling me to do? And that's what we're going to get into today. I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do, including what's running while I am not at my desk, while I'm away, while I'm home with my daughter, who's going to be 5, and what I genuinely and honestly do not do. And one thing that we all have to stop pretending counts as marketing if you want to be successful. This is a Six-Figure Personal Stylist podcast. I'm Nicole Achi, and this is the show for personal stylists building world-class businesses and setting the standard in their industry. We're talking all things profitable growth, thought leadership, and real client transformations, because the best stylists don't just edit closets, they shape culture. Most stylists think that visibility is this binary thing. Either you're on all the time, posting every day, in your DMs constantly, in your inbox responding immediately, or you're fully off and you'll deal with it later. Those are the only two options that many of the people I work with can imagine, which is part of why summer feels so impossible for so many of the stylists I work with, because option one is incompatible with rest, with their other obligations, and option two is incompatible with having a real business. We just have to be honest about this. But there's actually a third option, and it's one I've been running for years. I've been teaching my clients to run for years, and it's the one I want to teach you today. This is something that people pay me a lot of money for, but it's such a common topic when I am talking to stylists looking into my programs that I really wanted to have an episode that outlines this. And I think summer is the right way to do it and the right time to do it. So the third option is that you build an engine that keeps showing up for your business, whether you're physically working or not. It's not a full on presence in my case, like it is when I am launching. And in the case of most of you, what you would try to be doing in your marketing, really pushing and going for it right before a season to fill your calendar. And if you're not doing that, you need to be doing that. You don't need to launch like I do, but you do need to be treating the shoulder seasons before an upcoming seasonal change, which is the thing that is the sort of catalyst for most people to hire a stylist, including their own, life transitions. You should be doing a stronger push to get yourself booked out. Doesn't always work, but you should at least be thinking like, let me really dedicate some time to this so that when you do book out, you can go down to a little bit more of a manageable cadence. But it's also not an absence. So I will be most active in two places that people connect with me the most, which is this podcast and Instagram, specifically Instagram stories. But this is a planned, intentional version of visibility that doesn't require me or you to like be performing your life on Instagram every day, which actually doesn't work anyways. So before any of this works, there's something that I just want to say. You can't market a high touch service business like an influencer and expect to make high touch business money from it. Okay. Influencers are playing a volume game. The business model is reach. They need numbers because their revenue depends on big numbers. And the reality is that stylists who are building a real personal styling business, not a dual influencing and styling business. I'm not saying you can't have both, but I'm just saying like you don't need that kind of reach, right? I am someone who has a very similar model to most of you. And the reason why I have that model is because I know what it takes to grow and I know what kind of income I would need to go to a different model in order to get help. So you sell a high trust service to a small number of clients who pay you well, or at least that's what the game should be. Your business does not need hundreds of thousands of followers. And in fact, even if it had it, the majority of those people would never be your clients. It needs to run right on like 100 people feeling like you understand them in a year, which I feel pretty confident anyone can do. So I'm not saying that you can't have a big audience. I'm not saying it's a problem, but I am saying that I have 3 clients active right now. One has 15,000 Instagram followers, one has 35,000, another one has 100,000, and they are struggling with sales. So I know for a fact that it doesn't matter in terms of your numbers or your reach if your content isn't hitting the right people. So if you're chasing reach and you're thinking to yourself when you hear my plan, how could I only post 2 to 3 times a week? You're not looking at the right metrics. You will burn yourself out trying to feed an algorithm that was really never going to make you money in the first place, because the algorithm is there to keep people on the app, and your job is to treat the apps like a dating app and try to get people off it. So, while it's a game, you have to learn to play with them. And so I want to say that because some of you are going to be like, "What?" when you hear what I'm going to say about the schedule. But the number one piece of advice I give people when I start working with them is to do less in their marketing, but go deeper. And if you know sales psychology, that's usually not a problem. So if you're watching what influencers are doing and you're copying the cadence and feeling like you have to be out there every day, if you need to take some time away, then you're just not clear on what business model you have. So that is one thing I'm going to say. If you want to up it more when you're not on vacation or whatever, that's fine. I'm saying this is what I do when I'm taking time away from my business. It's not necessarily the schedule I have all the time, though I'll be honest with you, it's not that much crazier. So this option really only works if you are understanding what metrics matter and if you know sales psychology, so that when you're actually putting down a few posts a week, they're resonating with the right people, or you're driving people to a wait list, to an application, or to your DMs if you're not working in the moment. So less volume, sharper intention, because I don't need you to be famous. I need you to have a successful business. So I'm recording this series, and this will be used again during upcoming summers. But this particular year, when I am recording it, I will be in Europe with my family for a month. And I want to just be clear about something up front. This is not a special situation. It is very special that I'll be in Europe for a month. That's not usually what I'm doing in the summer, but I take roughly the equivalent of 3 months off across every year all the time since I had my daughter. So we're going on 5 years. I also did that when I was a stylist, probably broken up a little differently, like it wasn't as long of a chunk. And often now that my daughter is school age, 3 weeks or a month of that is just days that I have to take off because my daughter is off of school in some way. And I think many of you can relate to that. It feels like everything is a holiday now. So I don't even include like a month of that. And again, like these are not usually one whole month at a time like this summer, but it is totally normal for me to take the equivalent of like 90 days off in my business. And I do this with a plan. I plan in advance. The only time I don't plan in advance is if it's like a long weekend trip. I can usually just like figure it out. That's not a problem. But anytime I'm going to be gone for like a week or more, I am planning that out in advance, usually at least like a quarter at a time. And then I always know I take a month off between Christmas and New Year's, and then I take a month off in the summer usually, or the equivalent of it in the warmer weather when she's not in school. And so the system I'm about to walk you through is the same one I run, whether I'm traveling or whether I'm home and it's just like a slower week because I don't have childcare. So if you're listening to this and thinking like I'm making it sound easy because I had a trip planned, I want to be clear. You can use the exact same system if life just like pops up on you and your kid's sick for a while. I use this all the time. It is my default. But in the case like me going away for a month, I'm not bringing my podcast equipment. I'm not doing all that. I am planning and scheduling things. And that is sort of how this has to work, right? Either someone is planning and scheduling it for you or you're doing it. But I also down the amount of cadence of content going out. And the reason why the system works for me and will work for you is because we have a very similar business model. I don't have a passive income engine. And this is important because I think a lot of people work with stylists or work with, you know, coaches that have a very different model than the one they are teaching. And while I think I can forever feel comfortable, telling people how to have a high-end one-to-one business because I'm going on like almost 20 years of it, even though I have group programs, I They are as much as one-to-one in terms of the cost that most of you are charging. They are all run by me. I do all my own sales calls. I do all my own launching. My podcast producer does help me with some strategy and does do obviously all the editing and getting the show notes out. But I do all my own marketing, all my own Instagram posts, all my Instagram stories. There is no team handling the bulk of this. And there is no team except for my program assistant who helps me work with the people in the actual school group or circle group. This business is me, my accountant, my podcast producer. So it looks very much like many of your businesses in terms of me being the person that's doing the marketing, doing the sales, and then delivering the actual service, which means that I feel very confident this will work for you. And that's why I think a lot of people get stuck in programs, get stuck with coaches because they're not even saying like this is why it works for this business model versus another business model, right? Like if you had a business model where you were running ads all the time or whatever, that would be a different model. And lots of people think they need to go to that model. They need to have group programs, they need to have, these big wait lists in order to be able to take time off, but it's just not true. And it's just another way people sell people crappy marketing programs, honestly. So I want to say that up front, I have the same model. And so before I walk you through the actual plan, I think many of you will resonate with this. And so I'm going to kind of use this as a good example to frame how we're going to think about this sort of planning for taking some rest. So there's a stylist that just finished my accelerator program a few weeks ago. And I was thinking about her when I was writing this episode because she's a mom. She has several kids. I think like maybe 2 or 3 little boys. And she has a really successful business. And she wrote in the group that she felt like she couldn't keep her head above water. She was running the business. There was an uptick in her sales calls when she was an accelerator. She had kids' sports and activities. She was trying to make the time for all of the things and be balanced, see her friends, exercise, go to her tennis lessons. And it just started to feel like too much. And she had just come off a really great week. She had held some really hard boundaries with clients. She had a new inquiry coming in after she just like raised her prices and was nervous. But the better her business went, the bigger the feelings were in her that she was sort of being torn in 2 separate directions between her quote life and her business. And everything was sort of competing for her time. And she felt like specifically marketing was getting harder and harder. And even though she was having all the success, right? So you think that when you have success, your mind is going to calm down. But if you have anxiety or noise around your marketing, it's going to be there when you make money because it's your default. And I can say that because for many years, it was my default. And here's what I told her because I think it's going to be helpful framing this conversation. You can't keep treating your business and your life like they are in opposite directions. And I see this a lot with moms. They have to work together and they can work together. And the way they work together is when you're capturing content becomes a part of the life you're already living, not a separate task you have to carve out time for. Now, if you have really little kids, like really little, that is tricky. And so maybe it's at night when they go to bed, or it's early in the morning, or you go on a walk and get a babysitter and do what I'm going to tell you. But that is the entire mindset shift. Most of you are exhausted because you built a content practice or believe that you need a content practice that requires you to stop living your life in order to do with it. You have to sit down at a desk, have the perfect inspiration hit, create from scratch, schedule, engage perfectly, and then go back to being the person you are the rest of the time. My life is incredibly well integrated, and that like my daughter sees me doing a voice note and then I have put the phone away and I'm paying attention to her. There's no like secrets. Nobody like doesn't know what's going on. I'm not working when I'm with her most of the time, but there are periods where I go through, a push with something and I'm very honest, like, I got to open my computer for 5 minutes and send this email before I sit down and play with you. And she's fine with it because I just make it part of the norm, but I don't make it the norm that my business is in her face all the time, if that makes sense. So I want you to also understand your kids are not going to be broken because they see you working once in a while. In fact, I have found that my daughter now plays work and she thinks it's like really cool. So that mindset shift that you can capture ideas and capture content, which for a lot of my clients who have ADHD is actually a way better way to go about your life because as soon as you're not in motion, as soon as you're not otherwise occupied, all of your thoughts shut down. So That model for many of the brains of the people that I work with just doesn't work, and when you convince yourself that it has to be, like, sit down in this, like, perfect little content batching schedule, if that's not how your brain works, like mine doesn't work that way, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So that model in general is often not very sustainable in the summer. The way that you stay visible without losing your life and not feel torn all the time is to integrate content capturing into the moments that are already happening. So this doesn't mean you're, like, filming yourself all the time wherever you are. That's not what I mean. It's the taking 10 minutes in the car before camp pickup to film a talking head video as something that comes to your mind. It's capturing some insights in the car, on your phone in your notes section after a client appointment before you get home to make your kids dinner. It's using the notes app to think of carousel ideas while you're at a sports practice and there's nothing going on. It's using a talk to text app on a walk every morning while you brain dump what happened on your sales call the other day. These moments are already there. And again, for many of the people that I work with, kids or no kids, it is the sitting down at a desk and feeling like you have to capture the content, shape it into something reasonable that goes out, and then put it into Canva that it's killing all of you. It doesn't need to be that way. You need to have your capturing in one point, and then you can schedule some time to take those ideas and then make them, a carousel or a talking head. And even that, do whatever is fastest, right? Just do whatever is fastest. For me, it's B-roll and carousels that I do really well with, and that's what I stick to, right? Do I do talking head? Yes, I do, but I do it more around times where I'm trying to push certain metrics or I have a launch. So for you, if it's easier to do talking head. That's fine. If it's easier to just do carousels, just do carousels. The point is this: nobody else cares what you do. They only care that you're present so that they can see if this is the relationship they want to have with you to hire you. Don't try to sit down, capture the idea, make it into a post, and then film or create the Canva content at once. That's a bad idea. Batch the last two parts, but make the first part of capturing part of your day. Because marketing is the heartbeat of your business. If you stop the heartbeat when your life gets busy, it becomes very hard to bring that business back to life. And you have to keep a pace, not of what other people tell you, but enough to be visible and be honest. Like, yeah, I'm going to be a little slower in my case, like June to July. But then as soon as I get back, I have a whole bunch planned, right? I will be stepping it up. I will honestly, to be totally transparent, because I am me, I will probably be writing marketing on the beach in Croatia. But like, that's not everybody, right? I tend to always be thinking about content, always be thinking about my business, but that's me. That's not necessarily how you are, but I'm not always actively doing work in front of my family. That's not true. So here's the system that I use. And I know I have a podcast and many of you don't, so I'm going to tell you how to shift it for you. But this podcast is batched ahead of time, and that is what I consider my anchor content, meaning at least one, if not two posts will be related to the content that comes out. Usually it's one mindset post and one tactical post. So one B-roll post with a hook and a caption, and one that gets me a little bit more reach, and then a carousel that's more of a nurture. So if you write a Substack or an email to your list, you can do the same idea. You can make that your anchor content. If you don't do those things, you can have an anchor idea for the month. So maybe 1 month you're going to talk about body image, or 1 month you're going to talk about shopping smarter, whatever it is, right? And you have an anchor idea, and then you make as many different points as you can, and then that becomes your posting schedule. That can be boring for some people. I totally get that. But having this idea that there's like one thing, especially if you have longer form content, if you do like if you have a longer YouTube video, say, then I have a lot of my clients take those transcripts, break them down, either make little clips or make the transcripts into content like a carousel or something. So you have one piece of content that you're then creating from. In my courses, I have the different types of content you should be creating in order to get people to like engage with you and want to hire you as an expert. And you can usually take one topic and run it through what I call my FAME marketing plan. And you can have the same topic, but different angles. So it will feel like fresh content. That's a very useful thing to know, that many of you could be burning yourself out because you don't understand how to take one topic and build it different ways so it seems unique and interesting without having to rewrite it all. So all of the anchor content is batched ahead of time, which in full transparency is a lot of work, but I have to do it either way. So there you have it. So I batch all of my podcasts that you're listening to. The other thing that I know specifically, because I look at my numbers, and we're going to talk about this in the next episode, that people listen to my podcast quite a bit in summer, and there's a little bit more time. They're on walks or at the pool, they're in the car driving. So the podcast job is not something I can just like let go of because it is my primary relationship with my listeners. So in order to protect my fall and my upcoming launches, I apply the same principles that I tell you because those are my busy seasons as well. So you are listening to that right now, meaning that one of the tactics I use when I said like create an engine that sells for you is I am planning out in advance and scheduling in advance a series, the one you are listening to now, that I will then reuse in upcoming summers. I highly recommend you think of also planning some kind of a series if you know you're going to take off in the summer. Or for me, I know I'm always going to take off in the winter or Christmas. So I have a New Year series, right? I build these assets and then I reuse them every year. And maybe you're going to change the like carousel covers of your grid or whatever. But people really like reused series because they come back to them and they get something new out of them. And they've done really, really well for me. But we know that people really tend to like series on Instagram, on TikTok, on Substack. There's really no reason why you can't make this work in any particular way. It also gives your brain something to focus on. And so all of my grid content will be a little bit lighter than if it was, say, a launch, but it will be aligned to the topics you are listening to on the podcast so I can send people back and forth. So I will be posting 2 to 3 times a week on Instagram. Half of the trip will be 2 times, and then the latter part will be 3 times. All of those will be batched, but all of them are easy to batch because they're coming from the podcast, right? And so then I use Instagram stories. So that's where I'm going to be active more days than not, but I'm not going to be documenting my trip in real time. So I'm not narrating my day. I'm not just going to show you random photos all the time. I mean, I might here and there, but that's not the plan. I plan to share insights and observations against the backdrop of whatever my life looks like at the moment. So this is not a special like summer story plan. This is my plan all the time. So, for example, if you're sitting in a cafe or at a beach, then maybe you put up something about a thought you have that is in no way related. So in my case, maybe it would be something about how stylists undervalue their consultation process. And so I just use the image in real time of like what I'm doing or what I did that day or like what I did that week. And I put the content on top of it. So my life isn't fake on social media. It's real-ish is what I like to think, because I'm not going to take time away from my 5-year-old to post a picture, but I'm also going to use the reality of what I'm doing at that season of my life to share my thoughts. And the thought is the point. This is a very different idea and angle from like, here's my cappuccino, here's my view, here's me walking around. That kind of content, if it doesn't have your expertise layered in, doesn't build trust or relationship with your audience. So for example, the only time I really do something like a one-off post like that is like if it's a good morning post where I'm like starting and ending my day. Those are things I do to keep myself in a rhythm. My clients look for them, or the people that follow me look for them, and that becomes a relationship builder. They know that that's how I'm starting my day, and so then it becomes a ritual between us. Besides that, I'm rarely sharing just for the sake of it. I know what I'm doing in stories. I know why I'm posting it. And I have some light notes, but I also am going off of adding a little bit more context to, say, the 2 posts that are on the grid that week or 3. Or I have themes that I'm thinking about from each podcast episode that I could go deeper on, right? I have a few things I want to share with people, books I'm reading, things like that. So value can look really, really different than what you might think. I don't mean like outfit tips necessarily. I mean value in the connection you're building with your potential clients and followers. The other thing is my email runs on a really light schedule. My podcast team now handles my weekly emails that go announcing an episode. Otherwise, I almost never send emails unless I'm launching. I'm not saying that's the best practice for you. I'm saying that's the best practice for me because I know my clients and I know where people are. And given the capacity that I have at this point in my business, running 3 programs, I only have focus on the things that I know work for me right now. So it's relationships with my ideal clients, which is on these platforms I talked about, podcasts and social media. But for many of you, the best path for you if you say work with women in corporate is going to be email, because they will be delighted to see your email come through at work. So maybe you need more touch points there, like once a week versus me needing stories. It depends. Everybody is different, their schedule and the way that they sort of decide to do this, but you want to think about what is the places that I have connection and what is the places that people find me, and how can I create a minimum schedule so I'm continuing to show up, I'm batching in advance, and I know I'm still staying in front of people until I'm ready to ramp back up for fall. If you are not a big email person, you can put an out of office on. The world is going to go on. The other thing that I don't do is I don't take sales calls, but again, I have a different sort of strategy for this time. If someone reaches out wanting to talk about working together, they got a specific response. I'm either not booking calls right now, I'm away, but if you want, you can chat in my DMs or you can schedule when I'm back. They have 2 options. 9 times out of 10, people chat with me in a DM and they usually sign from my DMs if they've reached out. I send them the contract and the invoice from my phone and HoneyBook. I cannot tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars of sales I have done on vacation because of my HoneyBook app. Not a ad for HoneyBook, just the truth. I do respond to DMs because it is a real-time engagement, but I don't do it all day long. So that is another thing that I do because it's just really not that time consuming for me. What I don't do, I think that is just as important about as like what you are going to do. So I am not posting from scratch and I'm not posting daily. I am using one piece of long form content. I'm not coming up with new ideas. I am not jumping into the comment sections of other people's posts, trying to stay top of mind. I am not overly engaging. I am not running ads that I have to watch. I don't run ads really anyways right now, but if I was, I wouldn't be doing that. I am not coaching my clients in Voxer. I've let them all know when they signed with me. I have a couple active ones right now that we will front load their calls. And then when I get back, we will be back at it and they get that extra time. So I literally give people extra time in the package, but I don't do Voxer on the way. They know that. I'm super clear before they sign on with me. Nobody has had a problem. I am not doing marketing emails. I am not launching. I have launched when I'm away, but this time I have chosen not to. I am doing a pre-launch warm-up. So the reason I can do less is because I am doing what was planned. I'm batching ahead. It all runs off a system that is just a little bit less than I would be doing anyways, but also like is very well integrated into my life because it's not cumbersome, right? I'm not trying to think up everything on the road or figure it out. I know exactly what needs to go out to get people to follow and like and become clients. And so I just keep a very lean sort of schedule based on that. And I want to address something else because I think a lot of stylists are conflating visibility with documenting their life, and it is not the same. So, sharing your life on Instagram is not by itself marketing your business. Like random iced coffee, sunset shots, your kid's sports game, if I haven't heard from you, is not marketing. It's literally just you doing something to do something. So, unless you are actively putting something up as a point of connection between you and your audience you serve, it doesn't even make sense. So, stop wearing yourself out being visible just for the sake of it. If, for example, you work with moms and they tell you a lot that they worry about, like the transition from like going from work to like after school stuff, then the soccer game photo can do some real work there because you could add a caption over it, show your look or something, and it builds trust with those women who you want to reach most because it's a context of their life they can see themselves in. If you don't work with moms and that's irrelevant to any conversations you've had, it's just a soccer game. That is an important distinction. Lifestyle content earns its place when it does something specific for the relationship you have between you and your audience, when it connects who you are as the business owner and the expert to the people that are looking for you, that want an expert to create a real point of recognition with you as a person. So, for example, if I am on the beach and it's a Thursday when the podcast comes out and I post about what it took to build the business that lets you actually be present, like this episode's talking about, that's trust building. I'm giving you the context of my life and I'm telling you something you can use because most of my audience wants to travel. Most of my audience wants to have this kind of schedule. If you are traveling and you're a stylist, show us how you pack. That's on brand. If you're a mom and your audience is mostly moms and you share a moment that captures the tension between being a mom and working, and it's like the kids' toys everywhere, that's going to earn its place because your audience can see themselves in it. The way that you test lifestyle content is, does this deepen trust, position me as an expert, or create real recognition or connection with the person I'm trying to reach? If the answer is no, then it doesn't have to go up. I'm not saying that it's going to like hurt anything. I'm saying that will keep you out of the mental anguish of like, I just have to do something today. It doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be in this moment. It can be a representative moment of your life and you can share an insight into it. Pretending that you just need to post random stuff of your life and then saying you're burnt out because you don't know how it's working isn't marketing. So you don't have to be visible all the time. I would rather you do 4 amazing Instagram stories that help people feel seen and give a little bit more value to, say, things you posted on your grid, and have some sort of active engagement like a poll or talking about something like a book or a resource that your people actually care about, and getting some DMs and asking you real genuine questions and having real conversations than just posting things to post things, because then people just stop paying attention. This is the bare minimum that I would say you should be doing to keep your business alive through summer. You have to have one offer that you're mentioning consistently, even if you're just driving people to a wait list or saying I'm booking whatever. Not 1, not 3. The one that you want people thinking about when fall hits. And if that's 1 story a week that you're talking about that offer or relating a pain point to that offer, you're doing great. A content rhythm that is repurposed and aligned. So if you're doing 1 to 2 grid posts a week during the slower time, then go and look at your best stuff from earlier in the year. Refresh it. If you have longer form content or you have some sort of like, content you've used in a newsletter, reuse it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to get things out. The next one that's so important is to capture your ideas and your insights in the margins of your life, and don't depend on your dedicated desk time to come up with ideas. Only use desk time to actually like create and schedule the posts, right? That should just be the like execution, not the ideation. Use your notes app, use talk to text apps, schedule tiny pockets of time, 5 or 10 minutes after you see a client or get off a sales call. That's where your content should be coming from anyways. And then when you're thinking of interacting in stories, or if you do a newsletter, think about how you can add the insights that relate to your clients against the backdrop of your life. You don't have to document your whole life. I always get this question of like, well, I don't want to be on social media because I don't want to share everyone your life. Trust me, you don't see my whole life. You think you know my life, but you don't. And that's what people that are like on social media that are creating real connections with as experts with people are doing. They're not showing every moment of their life. And then last, you have to have messaging that connects with people, not content for the sake of it. So less volume only works when each piece is actually pulling its weight. And so that's where that like sales psychology piece comes in. That's where things like my top picks for summer are not going to do it. They may get you link clicks, but they're not going to get you clients. And so those are the bare minimums. You can do more, but you don't need to. And if you do this really well, you can get away with like 10 Instagram posts and a couple stories a week. 10 Instagram posts over a summer is what I'm thinking, right? And a couple Instagram stories that are just a quick few insights you capture here and there, and protect the momentum you could be building for fall. Next week, we're going to talk about a business audit you could do while you are maintaining this lighter visibility rhythm and actually have more bandwidth when you get back into business. And this is the part a lot of stylists either know about and don't do, or they just never take the time to do this. And it's not even a few hours of work that can completely change how your fall looks. So stick with me for that episode, and I will talk to you next time.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It turns out that social proof is actually pretty important. So if you could help me out, I'd so appreciate it. If you just had a quick free moment and could leave me a rating or review on the podcast app, that would be killer. And even better, if you wanted to share this episode on Instagram and tag me, that would totally make my day. And it would bring so much more awareness to the podcast and would help other stylists just like you who are looking to build lucrative styling business, because the better each of us does, the better all of us do. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll chat with you next time.